Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today I ran an experiment. I needed to create a desktop application, a real simple one, for adjusting settings on a device, and I decided I would try using AI to write as much of it as I possibly could. I've not done this before. I've used it for doing documentation and things like that, but I ended up creating a full desktop application, and this is what it came up with. It's fully functional, has a few features that are pretty nice. So let's go take a look at the process of generating this application. I use AI, fairly regularly for doing documentation and things like that, occasionally for working on technologies that maybe I'm less familiar with. But I want to use it to build an app that I know how to build myself, but let's just see how it works. So just to give you some context, I've got a controller here. It's a transfer case controller. Exactly what it is isn't all that relevant for this. But what I need is it's got some variables that we can set in it. And I want to move from those variables. Right now they're hard-coded. I want to put them into a settings file. Actually, I want the customer to be able to adjust the settings file with a user interface. So I want to create an app that has a very simple user interface that allows them to view what the settings are, make changes, and push them down to the device. I don't know what they're going to be using as far as a computer, so I want it to be cross-platform. I don't want it to be a mobile device. It's got to be a desktop device because we have to be able to connect a USB cable up to the device. I also don't know exactly how familiar the user is with, a lot of computer stuff, so I don't really want to use a terminal. I want to have a user interface that is a windowed base. To me, that tells me it needs to be Avalonia. I'm doing this in a language that I'm comfortable with and that I like, so I'm doing it in C#. So I'm just going to make the choice that I'm going to use Avalonia UI for this, and that's really what I want to start with. Tell it I want this type of an app and some parameters around it, and let's see how it does for building it. So let's go give this a try. It's going to be a discovery for both of us. I've not done any of this work ahead of time to kind of, see how things go. Oftentimes I'll do that for videos. I run through it once myself to see how things go and then come back and shoot. This time, let's just build it and see what happens. So the first thing we should cover is what AI am I going to use? I'm going to use Anthropic's Claude. I do pay for this, so this is not the free version. If you're using the free version and trying this out, your mileage may vary. You might have less queries, whatever. I use it often enough, especially for, again, XML documentation, that I pay for this. So I've already come up with a prompt. Basically, I'm going to say, I know I want it to be Avalonia UI. I'm not going to let it make any recommendations there. But I want two tables. Basically, I need a table for the switch on the dash. Basically, this controller allows you to, it drives the transfer case in a four-wheel drive vehicle. It allows you to put it into two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive high, four-wheel low, right? We've got some voltage settings that we're reading on the switch to tell it what gear we've chosen, what gear the driver wants it to be in. And then we have another set of voltages that read from the transfer case to say this is what gear we're actually in. So I have two tables that I need. They're just key value pairs. All I'm going to do is have a label and a value next to it, right? So that's what we're saying here. Contains key value pairs. The keys are fixed. There aren't, a variety of variables. Basically, it's a high and a low voltage for each of the gears. And the values, they're going to come from a file, probably. We can get into how that all works later or maybe in a different video. But the goal here is that those values are user editable. So they need to pull them, display them, and let the user edit it. And then I need some sort of a button that the user can click that says apply. And that's going to perform some action. What it's going to do is it's going to write those into a file and then take that settings file and push it over to the device. But let's start with that as a prompt and see what it gives us. All right, so it looks like it has generated two files for us. One is the main window Interesting that it gave us a key value pair class, even though key value pair already exists. It did give us a view model, and then it gave us the main window view. So let's go paste this into Visual Studio and see what we get. I'm just going to add a new Avalonia UI project to this solution. This solution has all of the logic for driving this transfer case controller. It actually has logic for a few different controllers, but that's just where we're going to start. So I'm going to start with an Avalonia. We'll use an MVVM project because it did create a view model. Already I question this, right? It's doing this initialize component here. I guess I should quit questioning and just start copying. Let's try this key value pair thing that it's using. Again, I don't really like it as an item, but we're going to use it. We're going to add it in here. Okay, and then let's come over to the XAML for the window. This is kind of more interesting to me because this is the stuff that personally I just don't like doing. All right, let's build this, see what we come up with. All right, so it doesn't know what a data grid is, but I wonder if that's an external package. Looks like Visual Studio's already hanging up, but right down here it says unable to resolve type data grid. So let's go put that in here. So it looks like it's saying that we need a NuGet package, and it's already updating the XAML. We need a package reference. And we have to add data grid to our main window. And then I think all it did was add some data grid stuff to the namespace, but let's just do that. So already it has something in the UI. And I'm just going to run this. Let's see what we get. We get nothing. All right, so our data grid, we just need to update our Avalonia version, I think. Let's go over to NuGet and take a look and see what the versions of these are. 11.2 is the latest, and I'm on 0, yeah. So the template is definitely old. Let's do this. 11.2. Yeah, so it's already whining about main window. Already has initialize component. I feel like I should have built this before I even added their code. I'm going to get rid of the view locator. Just see what happens. Yeah, see, it told me to add this data grid styles. That doesn't even exist. So let's copy. We're just going to paste the error right back in. So I find this happens a lot. It's like, oh, sorry for the confusion. Let me correct it. So basically it completely lied to me. And now it's updating what it said. Yeah, this doesn't even build now. But I don't know if it was a problem with the template or if it was a problem with what code it gave me. I actually suspect it's a problem with the template, not the AI generated code. So let's just grab one of these and see if it can help us find out why this doesn't build. So it actually is changing the main window. I honestly don't see what it changed. It says it removed the explicit initialize component method. So when you get confused like this, I'm just going to take the apps, just take it all and give it to the AI. This is going to be open source anyway, so I don't care if it remembers or, any of that. So I'm just going to feed it all of this information. See what it thinks. Okay, so it says don't do this, even though that's what it told me to do. And we're going to update our view model base, our main window view model. Okay, now let's build it again. So it's putting the view locator back in. There we go. It says we can skip the view locator, by going into the templates and removing the view locator. So in our app XAML, we can remove the view locator. Complaining about the Fluent theme. Let's see what it says here. So we need a package reference for the theme. Still complaining about there being two initialized components. And that tells me that the source generator's got to be causing some sort of a problem here. We'll just keep feeding it the error messages. I don't know what the hell it's doing. Okay. This time it says it succeeded in building. Oh, and look at that. So it looks like you have to follow the documentation here to update it to an 11.x from a 0.10, which what we had. So the AI model did not know how to do this and didn't correct that. So that frustrated me and added a bunch of pain in the ass. This theme handling here, having the mode in it caused problems. So I just removed that. Don't know why the documentation here has it one way, but whatever. And then I had to go back and rewrite all of this XAML that it had originally given me. So it rewrote it for me. Now let's go run this. Okay, so we have our two tables and we have an apply button. Really, I would like the tables one above the other. So I want to change how that works. And I want the this started up on the other window, but it also started up really, really wide. Stack the tables vertically. Start up with the form auto sized to the tables with a margin. So let's copy that. And again, I'm not even looking at what it's doing. I'm just going to copy it, paste it in. All right. That actually looks pretty good. Make the vertical window size just below the apply button with a margin, of course. Basically what I'm trying to do is get rid of all of this dead space down here. Now it's telling me what it's doing over here. Right here. I can change the style. Right now it's in normal. Let's change it to concise just because I don't really need all of the explanations. It's interesting. It actually was the right size over on the other window, but then when I drag it over here, so it started up on my right monitor and it's correct. But when I drag it over to the other monitor, it's incorrect, and then it's still incorrect when I drag it back. So let's just tell it what's happening. All right, I have no idea what it changed, but it's still doing it. Does the same exact thing. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay. I want to add a cancel button, so if you make some changes and I hit cancel, it just reverts to everything. So let's copy the XAML. And then let's go up here in our view model. Okay, we have apply and cancel. So that is editable like I wanted. The keys are not editable. That's also nice. So that's all doing what I wanted. So I'm actually really pleased with the app that this thing has generated so far. This is going to be interesting, right? So I changed that, and then if I hit cancel, it comes in here and executes the cancel. And it reverts back to what it was. So that's pretty nice. So now we need to implement this load data from file and execute the apply. So this is one of those instances where I don't think that it has much of a chance of being able to implement it because it needs to load data from a file. The file is over on the device, and the API for doing that, I just invented within the last 2 weeks. So it has no idea what that could possibly be in order to go get this. In fact, it's probably even completely undocumented. But let's see if we can give it some hints on what the API is and see if it can figure it out. based on our hints. So the first thing I know I'm going to need is I'm going to bring in some of the CLI libraries from Meadow. I'm going to bring them in as a project reference. I'm going to open up the CLI source code first. So up here we have some new features where I can do app config show, and I can actually set some of these values. So we have a command line interface into the app settings file over on the device. So what we want to do is we want to do the same thing the CLI is doing. So when we want to make changes, what we're going to do is we're going to load settings. In fact, we should add a button that does that. It'll go out to the device, grab the settings, pull it back, and then display it. In fact, let's start with that, right? And really that's what this does here. In fact, I have a device connected. So if let's just run the config show so you get an idea of what this does, right? Perfect. So this right here, so you can see I have switch and the MP3023. So these are our values that we want to adjust. If I do a config show, you can see that it understands these. So it is pulling those back. So we want to use the API to read these and populate these tables. I want one for switch and one for the MP3023. Interesting. We're going to have probably some sort of a drop down that we can select the device in our app, right? Well, let's tell it what we're going to do. The app will connect to a Meadow using CLI libraries. I need a combo box. To allow the user to select the port for the Meadow. I want the box to fill with available connected devices. I have no idea if it'll figure that out. I mean, the API is available and the code is available. So it has some selected port stuff. And again, we might have to help it out here. Yeah, see, so it's trying to use system IO ports. Even if it did a bunch of work for us for the UI, that'll be useful, right? Now it's going to do this, and I could get this working, but there's no point because that's not really what I want to do. So let's add in from here, right? We have the get current device, and then we can use the settings manager to do this. And so I know that the settings manager is in Meadow HCOM. I'm going to add a bunch of references in. Well, I'm going to add the projects in, then I'll add the references. And so I'll be right back when I have all that done. All right, so I pulled in a few of those projects. This gives me access to the Meadow Connection Manager. So I've just changed the ports to do a get serial ports on that instead of just enumerating all the serial ports on the device. This way it should look for serial ports that actually have a Meadow connected to it. So now if I run this, comes up and we see we've got this serial port and we can hit refresh. It hasn't changed. I've got one device connected. So that's working. So really what we want to do is we want to have it pull this data, right? So we need a button that says fetch or something like that. That says go get all of the data so that we can populate these. But I've made changes to the view model that the Emma or the AI doesn't know about. So let's go over. So I'm going to tell it that I've updated the view model and give it that so that if it gives me new stuff, I don't lose this in cut and paste. And let's put this button rather than down at the bottom, up at the top. I don't know where it would put it, but I know that's where I want it. So let's add a button to the right of the port list. When it is clicked, it will retrieve data from the selected device. Let's see what it says. So let's copy these. See where that puts us. So it thinks that it's doing set port. It doesn't understand the API, so it's just kind of guessing as to what it would be. So we know that we do need a connection manager, but that connection manager is going to use settings. In fact, I don't even remember this exact stuff for this, so we'll just figure this out here. So that goes and gets all of our settings, and then once we have the settings, we're going to need to parse that out. This comes back as a dictionary, so then we need to pull that data. But I'm just going to put a breakpoint right here. See if we get to that point, and then we can figure out what keys in there need to get applied. Let's see what happens. Got us a connection. That connection does not have a device. So we need to attach. So let's come back up. Wait for the attachment. Connection now has a device. Create our settings manager. Read our settings. It's got 4 settings. Switch and MP 3023. Exactly what we expected. So I could go through and figure out where it's putting that. But let's see if the AI can figure this out for us. So again, we've made some changes. So we want to let it know what has happened. So I'll drag it over here. And I'm going to let it know. I've updated the view model. We're going to tell it settings manager, read app settings, returns a dictionary, values in the key. No idea if that's going to work. It has updated the XAML. Looks like it updated it twice. Probably for the 2 different things that I requested. Switch settings and MP3023 settings. I like that. And let's copy this for our view model. Let's just see if it has the connection manager. So I can already see that this is incorrect, right? So I'm not going to paste that in because I already know that it's incorrect. So it doesn't seem to be able to figure out, based on my code update, what needed to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give it some hints here, right? I'm going to say, I no longer want to get the data from a file. And I want it to rename the collections. So we can already see that it's done switch items and 3023 items. That's what I like. Get data from device. So now it's using my settings manager correctly. I knew this key value pair thing was eventually going to bite us because it has dictionaries. Let's rename this. So I'm going to tell it I've renamed key value pair to device setting to prevent namespace collisions. But let's just start this, see what happens. I'm going to click get data and nothing seems to happen. So let's come down here, try to get the value. Doesn't know what that is. Okay, so yeah, so it's having a hard time casting from object to string, which is totally fine. The dictionaries coming back from the settings are objects, and it's, I think, expecting strings, so it doesn't know what to do. Yeah, so these are a hierarchical piece of data. So we've got a key with a value that's a key value pair again. So I have to get it to understand that. So I've renamed key value pair to device setting to prevent name collisions. Now I have to tell it the nature of that data. If I had it in something like JSON format, it would be way, way, way better. I have this, so I can just give it this, right? So I'm going to tell it that the data returned is hierarchical with string keys and values that are key value pairs. I want to display in the left column a concatenation of all of the keys. So for example, high 4 max, and then the right column, the value. So now I'm going to give it this YAML to see if it helps it to understand what's going on. I have no idea if it will figure this out, but maybe it will. Be interesting to see. Still calling them key value pairs here. But let's try just this for each. If this works, we can feed this back in so that it has this source to help. I'm just going to run it, see if it figured it out. It didn't, so it blew up somewhere. So we are absolutely stretching its ability to figure this one out. And maybe it's just because I can't explain it well enough. And I think this is just because it didn't know the types. It actually did a pretty good job of figuring this out. Let's get data. And there we go. So it did do that. And of course, now our window isn't resizing. That irritates me. So let's fix that. So these are all the correct values. So these are getting pulled off of the device sitting on my desktop. So these are coming from a Meadow F7 device. Not going to lie, that's pretty cool. I didn't do a whole lot of work or coding. You know, the AI has generated most of this for me. So let's have it fix that thing where when I get data, I want it to automatically resize. So now what I'm telling it, when I fetch the data and rows get added, I need the window to auto resize vertically to show all of the data. And it looks like everything is done in the view. I have not told it about those changes that I made to the view model. All right, let's run it again. Now let's get the data. And it did not resize. So I'm telling it now that it didn't resize after populating the table. Data is now out of bounds to the bottom. Okay, so it is making some changes. Yeah, it's making changes to the view model. I need to make sure that it understands what our view model is, because you can still see it's got these the incorrect dictionaries here. Now I'm telling it to merge those changes into my latest view model code. We'll spot check this before we paste it, that it has those dictionaries correct. It does. It is now complaining about something. We're going to paste the error right back in. See, we're on the terse or concise here. So I don't know exactly what it's changing and why. Yeah, I have to change it back to normal because I don't understand what it's doing. I feel that this is wrong, or it's setting that data context, because I feel like it was already getting set elsewhere. But let's run it and find out. There we go. I like that. All right, so we have an application now. When we run it, it will open up. It automatically populates with the devices that are connected. I can say get data. It connects to it, pulls it down, populates these tables, and auto resizes the window. And these values are adjustable, so I can edit those. If I hit cancel, it will, undo any changes that I have done. So let's say I make a couple of changes. If I cancel, it reverts that. So that's all working. We probably should have some validation that makes it so that we can only put in numeric values here. But really what I want to do is I want to have this apply. So when I do apply, that comes in here. If fact, so if I do that, it actually says, it saves the original data, which I think just caches it here. That way, if I make a change down here to something else, and then I hit cancel, this goes back. Okay, yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily want to save it. I would probably push it to the device and then reload from the device. But that's fine. So really, we need to implement sending the data here. So now the one thing that I have to do is those settings that come in, we need to store them so when we make changes, we can push those back into those dictionaries to write them back out. So let's try to explain that to the AI, see if I can do a good job of that. Okay, so when we set the values, we have to give it the, basically, since it's hierarchical, when we set the values, we have to send it in a little bit of a different way. Since the data is hierarchical, we're going to have all of the keys at the initial separated by colons, and then we have a value. So I need to explain to the AI that that's what I need to do. So I need to keep a dictionary of changed values to send back to the device. They must be sent in a format where the key is colon separated, and then I give it an example. So to update a switch value, I might send switch colon low for colon minimum, or min, and 1.62. Let's see if it can figure that out. This is getting a little bit more complex, and I find that I'm having a hard time putting into text the things that I want to explain. Conceptually, I know what I want, but how do you explain it to it? Boy, it's writing a lot of code. Okay, so you can see it's already made a mistake. It's reusing a variable name here. Not a huge thing. Well, it's really interesting that it actually guessed right app setting and all of that. So that actually tells you that the API must not be too bad because it's able to guess at what it should be. All right, let's try this. We're going to get the data. We're going to make a change. We'll hit apply. Comes in. The change settings. It says there is one. Switch low 4. It is not switch low 4 though. This is switch low 4 min, right? Oh, well, that's correct. Min. Okay, so we have a bug. It's giving us low 4 here. It should be low 4 colon min. So it's incorrect, and I'm going to tell it the display is incorrect. It shows 2 rows for switch that have a key of low 4 instead of low 4 min and low 4 max. And I really need to fix that because we've made changes that it doesn't know about. Again, it's got this duplicate variable name. Let's try it once again. Get the data. There we go. Low 4 min, low 4 max. There we go. So these are all what I would expect. Change low 4 min to 1.75 and hit apply. Shut down the app and run it again and see if it comes up at 1.75 when we run it a second time. If it does, that means the data has gone both to the device and back. So that did fail. Okay. It knows it's there. It gets the connection. Connection is good. We have a device. We're going to write the app settings. So the changed settings. Switch low 4 min is 1.75. Well, that's pretty good. It's saying that we need to disable the runtime on the device, which is great. So the way the meta works is the file system you can't modify from remote if the application itself is already running. So what we'll have to do is we'll just disable the runtime, which basically shuts down the app on the device, wait for that to disable, and then push our values. So we're going to change this to 1.75. And in fact, let's change another one so that we've got multiple values to 1.85. So we've got 2 values that we're sending in. And let's apply. The runtime is enabled. This will disable it. Now this actually resets the device. You probably didn't hear it, but the USB sound just happened that said that it restarted. And then it's going to write the app settings. I did not get an exception. So 175 and 185. Let's shut that down and run the app again. Look at that. I mean, it clobbered all of the rest of the data that was there, but it did set those. And so clobbering the existing data, I think, is actually the way that the behavior normally is. That's how you delete data, is just send over stuff that isn't there. So I need to update the app to send all existing values back, not just changes. And let's show it the data or the code that we've already changed so that it doesn't overwrite a bunch of that. So now I'm going to tell it I need to send all keys and values that were initially read back to the device, not just changes. It keeps messing this up where it's reusing a variable name. And I even changed it and gave it the change. I'm going to redeploy the app to the device so that it has the correct settings file with everything in it. Okay, so I've redeployed the app, and you can see it has all of the settings back again because I'm obviously deploying those. So let's try to run our app again. We'll read all the data. I'm going to change this one to 1. I don't remember what I was using before, but let's use 1.75 and 1.85. And let's apply. Probably could use some sort of a status thing that says it's complete, but whatever. Let's close that. Let's run the app again. And let's get the data. And it seems to have not set those values. I already see what the problem is. We've lost our code where we disable the runtime. I could just do a get data again, but let's shut it down and restart it just to be very certain that it is doing what we want. And it lost all the data again. I feel like it has lost some of the information. All right, so now I'm telling it the code is still sending only changes. Also incorporate my existing changes and fixes. And sending it in that file again. All right, let's give it yet another try. There we go. And this time it read back the values that we had and it didn't clobber anything. So really the only thing left is to add, well, let's call it a status or something down here to let us know if there's an exception or, when we hit apply that it changes it to done. And really that'll be it for the app. Now I'm going to give it a prompt. Add a status bar at the top that will display error information on an exception or information like sending data or send complete. It's interesting to see what it is doing here. It is regenerating the view model several times. So I think what it's doing is it says update to the methods to show the status messages. So it's picking each status message and regenerating the whole view model for each message that it's adding, rather than doing it all at once. So just for that alone, it generated the view model, it looks like 7 times, just for that one request. So it has made a mistake. It didn't declare the Windows service. But I think that's the only mistake that it made, at least syntax-wise. Let's change this to 7.0 and 8.0. Let's apply and see if the status changes. Not seeing anything change. If I hit apply, so it is sending a message. So now I'm going to tell it the status message property is changing, but I see no text on the view. Now we have a status bar up here. So let's get data. That looks great. All of that's working. And now let's do a get data and I'm going to change something again here, but I'm going to disconnect the device so that we can test a failure. So there's no device connected now. Oh, it even made it in red. There we go. That's fantastic. There we go. We've created an Avalonia application that shows some data that we've retrieved from the device, lets us edit it, and send it back to the device itself. So if we take a look at the Claude output here, you can see that it has 16 versions of the XAML that it has created. I think it created 26 versions of the view model. We had a couple of other utility classes that it created for us, but really there wasn't a whole lot to it. And the amazing thing was that we built this whole application in, it looks like, roughly 3 hours. So overall, is this a valuable tool? Absolutely. It certainly made things easier for me. It did a bunch of the grunt work that I don't care to do. Yes, it needs hand holding. No, it's not going to replace a developer that, has experience. And I know it doesn't do well with complex stuff because I've tried. But for simple things like this, it's a very, very good tool. Hopefully you found this interesting. I certainly did. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching.